Great.
Okay, well, welcome all of you to the Regional Growth Committee for Wasatch Front Regional Council. Today is Thursday, March 17th, 2022. For the first time in my whole parenting career, and like I only have 2 kids left at home out of 6, and they're both in high school, for the first time ever, I forgot to remind them it was St. Patrick's Day, and neither of them left wearing green. So there you go. I remembered way later than that and changed. Anyway, if you're not wearing green, we're not in person. We can't do anything to you, but just saying, it's probably a good idea. This morning, we want to do an introduction. We're going to have Andrea do a roll call for us, and then we've got a consent agenda item. And then I'd love to take a few minutes and very quickly let our new members introduce yourselves and let everybody know who you are. So Andrea, if you would please do a roll call first.
Thank you, Mayor. Today we have Ted Knowlton, Andrea Pearson, Mayor Palmer, Jory Johnner, Megan Townsend, Carlton Christensen, Jennifer Elskin, Robert Dandoy, Mike Sobchak, Michaela Jordan, Shailene Gee, I hope I said that right, Miranda Jones-Cox, Andrew Gruber, Matt Wilson, Colby Daly, Monica Zoltansky, Natalie Gochner, Ari Bruning, Don Ramsey, Kendall Thomas, Rosie Hernandez, Ned Hacker, Ginger Chin, Colby Oliverson, Ryan Beck, John Pullman, Kevin Van Tassel, Richard Snellgrove, Brett Milburn, Bridget Mandel, Helen Peters, Brian Horrocks, Nicole Bordeaux, Richard Schmidt, Russ Fox. I'm going with Mayor Hales, Marsha White, Nikki Navio, Julie Bjornstead, Jenny Wilson, and we have 2 people on the phone. If you're in a place where you can unmute and state your names, that would be great. Looks like
Commissioner Scott is here. I'm sitting in for Mayor Bott from Brigham City today.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner. And looks like Stephen Shields also joined us. We have quorum, Chair. We're ready.
Thank you, Andrea, so much for that and for everything to help us make sure that we are ready for this meeting and that it goes well. Andrea is an unsung hero behind this, and we just appreciate it so much. Thank you. Okay, we have, let's approve the minutes and then we'll do some introductions really quickly if that's okay. All right, the minutes have been sent out from the Regional Growth Committee meeting from January 20th, 2022. We had early on in the legislative session, and wondering if anybody's had an opportunity to review those minutes and would like to make a motion to approve. You are welcome to put it in the chat.
Motion to approve.
All right, thank you. We have a motion by Carlton Christensen. Is there a second?
Second, John Pullman.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. All right, any discussion to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll just ask you to unmute. And if you vote in this, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Is there anyone opposed? All right, those minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, I'm excited to welcome our new members and appreciate very much you being here with us and officially being members. I'm going to list the names and then, actually, I'll just go to you one at a time. That's going to be easier. But I'm going to call your name and then ask if you'll just take a quick, give us a 30-second synopsis of who you are and what you do and why we're so excited to have you be part of the Regional Growth Committee. First, we have an alternate, Mayor Brett Hales of Murray. Mayor Hales.
Anon, how are you, everyone? Brett Hales. I just was sworn in as the mayor of Murray 2 months ago. Rookie. I'm excited. I got to talk to Don for a second yesterday in Washington, D.C. I come from Magna, Utah. We have 5 kids. My wife and I have 5 kids, and we've lived in Murray for 35 years, and we're just excited to be part of this.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. All right. We have Commissioner Jim Harvey of Weber County. Jim, okay, I don't have a full list of who's with us. So if they are not,
I think Commissioner Harvey has not been able to join yet.
All right. I'll go through the list, and if they're not here, you can tell me because I can't see the names of everyone who's on here right now in this version of what I'm looking at. Mayor Brian Horrocks of North Salt Lake. Horrocks.
Hi.
Hi.
Let me turn my camera on. Brian Horrocks, Mayor of North Salt Lake, newly elected. My claim to fame is that I've been replaced by Ted Knowlton on the City Council. Oh, we've certainly upgraded there. Anyway, happy to be here. Thanks.
Mayor, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, we have an alternate. We have Mayor Lauren Palmer of Harriman.
Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. Appreciate the chance to be here and work with some familiar faces that met along the way already, but been out here in Harriman 9 years, just took office in January, and obviously dealing with a lot of growth out here. So looking forward to this committee and how we can use resources amongst everybody here, and just appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. All right. Next, we're going to go to another member, Mayor John Pullman of Fruit Heights.
Hello, Mayor Ramsey, John Pullman. I was an alternate for the last 3 years, but probably didn't attend this meeting as often as I thought I should. So anyway, I am now here full time. Glad to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. All right, we have another member, Commissioner Matt Wilson of Morgan County. If Commissioner Wilson
is here, he might have a trouble.
He's on mute.
I think he's on mute.
Am I on mute still?
There you are.
Good morning. Lived in Morgan all my life, 57 years. Love it. And I'm excited to be new to politics, but excited to try and help our community. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Okay, we have another new member, Mayor Monica Zoltansky of Sandy City.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Monica Zoltansky. I'm the new mayor of Sandy, and you might recognize me better with my red cowboy hat on, because that has been a signature look of my brand. I'm a horsewoman who accidentally came into politics because of environmental and open space preservation issues. So that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to serve my city and to serve with all of you, and look forward to learning from all the veterans on this committee.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. We also welcome Ginger. Is there any Irish in you? You've got red hair. We have Ginger Chin from the Utah Transportation Coalition, representing Utah Transportation Coalition.
So I'm actually with the Salt Lake Chamber, Mayor Ramsey.
I did know that, and I'm wondering why my list says Utah Transportation Coalition, but I thought, well, yeah. Okay, I won't
because well, and the Chamber has led out on the Utah Transportation Coalition for many years, but predominantly the Chamber. So no Irish in me, and I was named after my hair color. Thanks, Mom. Right around the time Gilligan's Island was popular. Thanks, Mom, for that one too. But no Irish, just happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, Ginger, thank you. We appreciate you being here and all the work you do with the Chamber. And we love your red hair. You might as well own today, right? Own today, whether you're Irish or not. You can get away with it. It's great. Okay, we also have Robert Schmidt here with us from the Urban Land Institute. Robert, are you here?
I am. Good morning. Good to be with you. I'm the incoming chair of the Urban Land Institute, a organization here in the state that promotes responsible land use in communities, and you know, we've got a wide range of members, and some of you are members of ULI, and we're happy to have you part of the Utah chapter. In my day job, I work for PEG Companies, a real estate development company. So glad to be here.
Thank you and welcome. We appreciate all of you. Thank you for being here, and I think that you'll find this is an amazing group of people to work with.
Mayor Ramsey, I wanted to note that we also have Mayor Harris from Bountiful City that has joined.
Mayor Harris. Okay, I'm looking, and I apologize that you're not on my list, and I didn't see you, Mayor Harris. In fact, I still can't see you. Kendallin, are you here? There you are. I can see you now. We'd love to have you just give us a quick introduction, if you would.
Hi there. Sure. Kendallin Harris from Bountiful, newly elected mayor, and glad to be with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Okay. Thank you for that, Ted. Got that. Okay. All right, next we have our public comment period. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak? If so, please turn on your camera and give us a wave so we know, or you can let us know in the chat. All right, I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, we'll close the public comment period of this meeting and move to item 3 on our agenda. We have a legislative session outcomes and Wasatch Choice discussion we're going to have. So the session has ended, and you know, I hope at least some of you have had the opportunity to catch your breath. Some, you know, most of us just don't, right? We just go into the next thing. But what a 45-day session this was. We're going to turn it to Miranda to highlight a few key bills that will affect transportation and community development and housing, which of course are the topical issues of the Wasatch Choice Vision that we work so closely on. Throughout this, go ahead and ask questions. If you've got questions for Miranda, she's happy to answer them, and you're welcome to, you know, weigh in, give us your thoughts. These bills collectively, they really focus on the coordination of transportation with land use and economic development, and that's what we're trying to do here. So there's some good legislation that came out of this session for us to talk about, and they affect communities, and they'll also affect the work of WFRC. So I'm going to turn it over to Miranda.
Awesome. Thanks, Mayor. And a special thank you to Mayor Ramsey and a lot of you that were so engaged and involved during legislative session, whether that was up on the Hill trying to help get certain appropriations or certain bills passed and weighing in there, or, you know, signing letters of support to various things. So we just appreciate not only all of your engagement, but also the engagement of our various partners at UDOT, UTA, MAG. There's so many, Utah League of Cities and Towns, UAC, etc. So we just appreciate everyone's good work during the session. So I'm going to share just a few brief slides and run through kind of what the outcomes were of this legislative session. 45 days, I think you all know that we have like one of the shortest legislative sessions in the country, and there's so much that happens in those 45 days. The legislature passed 513 bills this year and passed a $28 billion budget, which is wild. It was actually interesting. Yesterday, Commissioner Jeff Scott said that, or no, sorry, Commissioner Gage Frower said that when he was in the legislature, you know, years ago, the legislature's budget that they passed was near, I think, 10 or 13 billion dollars, and now we're up to a $28 billion budget, which is wild. But there was a lot that went into those 45 days. At the bottom of the screen, and we'll send these slides out after, I have our 2022 legislative session wrap up. That's like a comprehensive summary of everything that happened during session that, you know, we think is important to know about. And so I'll have Andrew drop that in the chat as well, so you can pull that document up there. I'll quickly, this is kind of our flow for the brief update. We'll first talk about funding and appropriations. We'll then move on to some key pieces of legislation that we think are worth knowing about. And then Andrew is going to take a few minutes and talk about one specific piece of legislation, HB 462, and requirements in there for station area planning for communities with fixed guideway transit. So with that, let's get into appropriations. So before legislative session and throughout legislative session, we've often shared what WFRC's funding priorities were moving into session. We have them listed here, and again, not in any particular order of importance, but then also the result. And what's so great to see here is that largely the priorities that WFRC brought forward to the legislature this year were almost funded in full, which is exciting. So you'll see here funding to replace previously authorized bonds for Front Runner, investing more in transit broadly throughout the state, and then also for the Point of the Mountain transit, Point of the Mountain area transit, money for active transportation. That would be in addition to $35 million that the legislature appropriated last year. Additional funding for roads to utilize our professional or our planning processes that we have here WFRC and with UDOT. And then funding for growth and planning with technical assistance and a statewide conversation on growth. So we'll get into that a little bit more. What kind of tied these principles together and going into the legislative session were rooted in these principles that were created with our various partners, UDOT, UTA, et cetera. And those principles are investing in infrastructure, supporting multimodal transportation choices, utilizing the professional planning and prioritization processes, and being fiscally prudent. And you'll see as we talk about these appropriations that it really hits on these principles. So first is noting that there was approximately $1.2 billion in infrastructure funding that went to transportation. So specifically, $721 million to accelerate road projects. Again, the $232 million in the bond replacement for front runners. So that's not new funding. That is funding that replaced bond authorization from last year. But regardless, that's cash going to the front runner project that saves debt service costs and also allows the TTIF, the Transit Transportation Investment Fund, to be freed up. And in addition to that, the legislature put another $75 million towards the front runner project, which is great. $40 million for active transportation projects. Again, this is in addition to the $35 million from last year. $75 million for Point of the Mountain Transit. Not, I have a bus here, but there wasn't specification on exactly what that $75 million would go to, but just for the transit solution at Point of the Mountain. And then roughly $98 million in other various transportation projects. So that's transportation. Again, like Mayor Ramsey said, please feel free to weigh in if you guys have any questions as I go through this. And we can answer questions at the end as well. But a few other things to know are growth and planning appropriations. These two appropriation requests came out of the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, were included in the governor's budget, and were proposed or recommended by the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. So this commission, Mayor Ramsey sits on as one of our local government liaisons on that. And so kind of quickly on these two appropriations, the $1.65 million for technical planning assistance. This is funding that would go to UDOT and then to the state 7 associations of government to provide additional technical planning assistance to our communities. So many of you may already know or are getting to know more about our programs like our Transportation Land Use Connection Program, TLC, and some of these others. And this funding will just bolster our ability to be able to help you all plan better in your communities by providing that technical assistance. So a really great appropriation. Again, this is ongoing for years to come, which is great. And then in addition to that is a $1 million one-time appropriation for a statewide growth conversation. So this is an effort, a values-based community engagement, communications and messaging campaign to work with our community members to help understand how they're thinking about growth challenges in their communities, and even help educate our communities about some of the tools needed and clear policy directions to accommodate this growth that we're seeing. So really excited about both of those appropriations. We'll move on to key legislation. There's just 3 bills that we'll talk about briefly. The first is SB 140. This was a bill by Senator Wayne Harper, who sits on our WFRC council. What the bill does is it makes changes to housing and transit reinvestment zones. This was a bill passed last year, which would basically allow for multifamily housing development around transit. Prior to SB 140, Front Runner was really the only eligible transit stations for HTRZ development. But now this bill does a limited expansion to tracks and bus rapid transit with caps on how many are allowed in each county for those HTRZs. Basically it's just is a limited expansion, allowing more communities and more transit stations to utilize this tool. I kind of have some other points on here on what it does specifically. One thing that's important to note is that it requires a reasonable percentage of units are multi-room and family units. This is to encourage that more of this development, more of this multifamily problem that we've been seeing over the last several years. So now we'll briefly touch on HB 322. This is the public transit capital development modifications. And to put it briefly, what this bill does is it would require UDOT to play a more important role in overseeing certain capital development projects. Specifically, the bill notes Front Runner and Point of the Mountain. UTA still is going to oversee and operate transit, but ultimately what this does is when the state has a financial interest in specific transit projects, that UDOT would be helping and coordinating with UTA in that process of overseeing those transit development projects. So again, kind of just something to keep a note moving forward. What's been so great is our friends at UTA and at UDOT have both been very gracious and about this bill, and have just ensured the legislature and ensured the rest of us that they'll continue to coordinate and work together moving forward. And so that's one bill to keep in mind. And then lastly, and this will kind of transition into what Andrew will talk about, is HB 462, the Housing Affordability Amendments Bill. So this is a bill by Representative Steve Waldrop. This bill includes a lot. There's a lot in this bill. There's changes to housing affordability, different changes that came out of the Commission on Housing Affordability, but specifically there's these two pieces that we want to hit. One is that it enhances reporting for moderate income housing plans. Many of you are likely aware of the MIHP requirements for your communities, and that was implemented in what was called SB 34 back from 2019. And ultimately that portion of the bill would expand what requirements expand the opportunities that communities can take advantage of for planning for moderate income housing, and then adds implementation requirements, benchmarks, timelines, etc., to kind of be for greater accountability measures. And so the League of Cities and Towns has mainly taken the lead on that portion, and they'll do further training on those changes here coming up in the future. So I believe it's April 13th and 14th. The League is going to do a training on these housing affordability amendment changes. And so keep an eye open for that to try and understand it and a little bit more. We also have a big summary of this bill as well that Andrew can drop into the chat. But the piece that we're going to spend a little bit of time on here today is the bill requires that communities with fixed guideway transit would have the requirement of providing station area plans for those areas around those stations. I have it here. There are objectives along with this bill, right? And objectives of station area planning, like increasing access to opportunities, access to multimodal transportation, increasing housing affordability, etc. But I'm going to kind of take a step back here and let Andrew kind of get into the details of this bill, how it impacts you and your communities if you do have an eligible station for station area planning, and kind of give us a quick run through of what that looks like. So Andrew, I don't know if you want to take over from here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Miranda. Great summary. And I just want to express my thanks to Miranda for all the terrific work she did during the session, and for pushing out lots of great information to all of you during the course of the session. And just before I jump into the station area plan specifically, because that's such an important element of how we deal with our nation's leading population growth, relates so closely to the work that we do here, I do just want to pull back and reflect for a moment on what happened in this past session. A lot of really meaningful, notable things, starting with the investments that Miranda was talking about. The fact that we have over the past 10 years, the fastest growing population in the nation, and that population growth is projected to continue over the decades to come, means that we have to continue the great work that UDOT does in being proactive in planning for and investing in our future. I'm thinking about all the work to come in making decisions and implementing that actually huge level of investment in infrastructure. Our friends at UDOT and UTA have their hands full. I see Kevin Van Tassel and Natalie Gochner are with us today, both members of the Utah Transportation Commission, which has the responsibility for programming the majority of those funds. And the way that work is done is in a lot of ways a model for the country, truthfully. The way we coordinate together, we plan for the future, we invest prudently for the future. And Natalie, I'll sort of borrow a point that you've made before, which is that the quality of life that we have in Utah does not happen by accident. It requires forethought and planning and good decision-making. And I think a lot of what's happened this session continues that trend as we go forward. The stuff that Miranda just talked about, we'll be reflecting on it again at our council meeting, our full WFRC council meeting next Thursday at 2 o'clock. We're going to be joined by Representative Mike Schultz, who's going to talk about the infrastructure investment, by Representative Steve Waldrop, who, as Miranda noted, was the lead sponsor for HB 462, and then also by Senator Wayne Harper, who will talk about the HTRZ expansion. So more to come on that. The reason we want to focus on station area plans, and Miranda, you can jump forward here, is that piece of HB 462 is, we think, critical and entirely consistent with the work that the Regional Growth Committee does. The Wasatch Choice Vision, our region's shared vision for how we can accommodate growth and still maintain great quality of life in the decades to come. This bill and this station area planning goes a long way to implementing that vision. So let's go to the next slide here. Overall, the objective of HB 462 and the station area plans, you see it here, is advancing shared goals by maximizing the development potential in appropriate areas through a collaborative city-led planning approach. And for those of you that represent cities, most of you on here, you were involved in our discussions throughout the legislative session. It is critical that we allow each city to determine how best to meet those shared objectives without mandating specific approach or zoning. Cameron at the league often likes to say, and Mayor Ramsey says this as well, one size misfits all. Everybody has a role to play in handling and addressing our challenges in housing and growth and transportation and air quality. And there should be an expectation that every city does that, but there shouldn't be a one size dictated down to each city on how to do it. So that's the sort of the principle that lies behind the bill. So let's get into a little bit of the details here. I will note, you can keep going, Miranda, I will note that we are not going to talk about all the details. We had many sessions throughout the legislative session, and there will be more to come, a deep dive on HB 462 and specifically on station area plans. As Miranda noted, I think April 13, 14, more at the League Conference. And then we will be very available to work with you, as will our partners at UTA, who were deeply involved in putting this together, as with the League of Cities and Towns and MAG, our MPO partner to the south. So the bill identifies these objectives, shared objectives to be achieved in station areas, which are areas that are great locations to absorb more growth and development. You see them here: availability and affordability of housing, sustainable environmental conditions, access to opportunities, and transportation choices and connections. These should all be familiar to you. They are directly related to the Wasatch Choice goals and principles, which was in a lot of ways greatly respected and a motivator for how the legislature would approach these issues, rather than dictating one approach to follow and implement our Wasatch Choice Vision. Next one. So here's the requirements for a station area plan. Cities with fixed guideway, that means front runner, tracks, and bus rapid transit with dedicated right-of-way and streetcar have to do a half mile around a rail, quarter mile around BRT. The station area plan itself has to have a vision, a map of the area for changes to be made within that radius to implement this vision, a 5-year plan for implementing the vision, the activities to occur over the next 5 years, and then a statement of how that plan promotes those objectives that were just listed out before. Of course, there's a requirement for engagement with the public and communities. And two important things that we heard during the session from you, from cities, is that having all of those requirements satisfied at every station area around the region is not practicable. Think about the airport station, for track station. We're not going to build housing right around the station, right in the middle of the airport. In other station areas, there may be very well established neighborhoods that are not ripe for the development of additional types of housing or other development. And so if there are impracticable, if it is impracticable to satisfy all of the conditions or objectives, then those conditions or requirements can be waived. So there's some flexibility in this. Furthermore, if a city has already implemented the provisions that are required for a station area plan, planning, zoning, et cetera, then that work need not be redone. Prior actions can satisfy the requirements of the station area plan, okay? Okay, I will note, even though it may feel like I'm going into a lot of detail right now, I'm skipping over a lot. It's all in the summary, and now and later, we will be more than happy to talk specifics with you. Okay, next, the process for development of the station area plan, the timing. So the cities have to do their station area plans and the relevant zoning for the station area plans no later than the end of 2025. However, there is a provision to trigger a faster timeline if what is defined in the law as a qualifying land use application comes in for a relatively large site with a significant amount of residential development that would require a zoning change. That can trigger a 1-year timeline, a clock, if you will, for a station area plan to be developed for a particular station area. Now, the timelines can be extended if they are infeasible to meet. And I will note to you that we, when I say we, I mean the we of WFRC, has the authority under this legislation to grant those extensions for infeasibility. So this is the first point at which in this discussion, I'm going to note to you the role that we will have as a metropolitan planning organization to implement here. This law ascribes to us certain responsibilities for review of plans. That is something we, as a group, are going to have to talk about as we go forward. And then here, there is technical assistance available to communities to develop these station area plans through WFRC and MAG. Funding is going to be provided to us to do that work through GOEO. And we are working now on figuring out what's the process for the award of that technical assistance. As you know, we already have our TLC, Transportation and Land Use Connection Program, jointly funded with WFRC, UTA, UDOT, and Salt Lake County. We have a process. Meg Townsend is going to talk about awards for TLC later in this meeting. But this is an enhancement to technical assistance. We're going to have to work on that as we go forward in collaboration with UTA and MAG. Okay, next is the certification process. So now let me give a little color commentary before I explain this. You know, those of you that were involved in this know that there was a push and pull dynamic this session and a concern from local governments that the state, that the legislature would exercise too heavy a hand in dictating what local governments do on their development. And I will say to you that to some extent, there was a compromise that was struck, that there would be a review of station area plans, not by the state, but by us, by the metropolitan planning organizations. And why is that more palatable? Well, for one, this is the work that we do, that MPOs do, is planning for transportation and land use. And two, who is WFRC? You are WFRC, right? We are made up of you. So this review of satisfying the requirements of the station area plan process is done by you and your peers, okay? So the way this works is the station area plan that's developed is submitted to us and to UTA for review. And then the MPO certifies that the requirements of the station area plan from HB 462 have been met. Now, importantly, we are not reviewing your zoning changes. That is completely the province of the local government. What the work that we would do, we would help you with technical assistance and we would do a review of the station area plans. Again, in our review, some of the requirements can be waived if they're deemed impracticable. I talked about that already. And again, the prior actions taken by cities can satisfy those SAP station area plan requirements. Then, after we do that review and certify that the requirements have been met, you, the cities, submit that evidence of the adoption of the SAP and certification to Department of Workforce Services as part of the existing moderate income housing plan reporting requirements that are enhanced somewhat by HB 462. Some of you are like, wait, what are you talking about? I don't really know what you mean. And some of you know deeply what I'm talking about because you're living it. I'm not going to go into details now, but it was designed, this stationary plan was designed to fit into that framework that already exists and is modified and enhanced by HB 462. Okay, next slide is changes to propel the developments within station area plans. First, and I guess the context here again is as you at the local level, you know the pushback that sometimes happens from particularly vocal, often minority number of your residents to changes into development, where developments can be challenged through referendum. The bill makes some changes to the approach for referring proposed developments. First, in an area that has a station area plan adopted, if there is a zoning change that is made that is designed to implement that station area plan, it will be non-referable if your legislative body, the city council, adopts that zoning change with a 2/3 approval. That's actually the same standard that operates at the legislature, a 2/3 approval. And if you clear that hurdle in the city council, the zoning change within the station area is non-referable. Second, same situation, if there is a referendum, but for a zoning change within a station area, the signature thresholds for getting something onto the ballot to be referred for a referendum are increased. And then finally here, there is a requirement for a first priority review by cities. Jump to the front of the line, an application for a residential development that would require a zoning change in a station area before a station area plan is adopted, okay? I imagine some of you, again, are thinking, wait a second, what is the rationale? Explain the details here. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to move past this. There is more in the summary, and we're happy to answer some questions here, either now or offline separately or through the upcoming trainings. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Miranda. So these are the stations, the cities that have transit stations. Now, this is just the Wasatch Front Regional Council area. This does not include the Provo and Orem stations in Utah County. And you see here the front runner stations, the track stations, and the now being developed BRT in Ogden. So for most cities, it's just a small number. And other cities, there's a larger number, and there are provisions built into the bill that no city, Salt Lake City in particular here, for example, gets overwhelmed with having to do so many at one time. There's it's like a sequencing built in to allow for a lag if there are too many stations at one time. Sandy doesn't, as Ted's noting, Sandy doesn't have the front runner station itself, but the radius around that station comes into Sandy. That's actually the same as for Mill Creek. Mill Creek doesn't have a station. It's not listed on here, but Mill Creek is within the radius of a track station. Those communities for their areas have to do a station area plan as well. And then the next, and I think the last slide, is a preliminary timeline. So April 14, the upcoming informational session, we will be sending out information about that, particularly to those communities that are directly affected by the station area planning requirements. Now, for you as a Regional Growth Committee, our next meetings are in May. Between now and then, we are going to be working on policies related to the MPO, our role. I already mentioned the determination of infeasibility of timeline for the review, mainly our review of station area plans for certification of those plans. The award of technical assistance, because it will be a vote. The certification of station area plans will require a vote from either the Wasatch Front Regional Council itself, or, and we have to decide this, perhaps delegated by the council to another committee. It could be this committee, the Regional Growth Committee. These are things that we need to sort out, but we are going to be bringing this back to you because you have a role working with your peers in doing this work and reviewing this work. The bill actually doesn't take effect until June 1. We intend to open applications for technical assistance in May, June, do a first round of awards for technical assistance for doing specifically station area plans, sometimes early to midsummer. And then the first date that station area plans would actually be due would be, this is that 12-month clock that I mentioned before for certain station areas that are triggered by a land use application. So the earliest they'd be due would be July 1st of 2023. And then there's that later date of the end of 2025. There's a bunch more related to timelines here that I'm not going to get into. So that is the end of the overview. And if you can believe it, that was the brief overview of station area plans. You know, mercifully, we've left out a lot of the details and probably gone over long even with that. So I'll end there and express so much appreciation again for the huge collaboration and engagement of so many of the folks that are in this meeting right now and others who partnered together, because all of this stuff, all of this process, again, is really about implementing our shared Wasatch Choice vision and making sure that we make the right decisions now that make sense for you in your local communities, but that enable us to absorb this population growth in a way that allows us to have great quality of life for decades to come. Okay, Mayor Ramsey or Miranda, I think that's all I've got on this.
Andrew, Beth Holbrook has her hand raised.
Oh, terrific. Beth, one of our key partners in working through this.
Hey, thank you, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say and echo what Andrew said. The work together collaboratively has just been outstanding. And I think that one of the things that I just wanted to also follow up on that I think is really valuable, all of this great work, again, is of course going to be disseminated throughout the communities, but I also wanted to talk about what we're also working with in conjunction with WFRC is that communication piece, because that's one of the really critical elements that we want to make sure gets across. This morning, and Mayor Ramsey was with me in an Olene Walker Housing Fund meeting. And one of the things that I talked about in that meeting is this is what the plans are moving forward, because bringing our development partners together, bringing other members of our communities to understand more of what we're trying to accomplish with these station area plans and this look at strategic development, the better that I think it will be for all of us, because then we can all work towards that similar goal. And I just wanted to again thank you for all of the work that was done. I know that I loved watching this process because it really allowed me to understand how UTA can work to get all of these pieces together and to take a look at these things strategically. That to me is key. And again, communication and letting all of our partners, we do a fantastic job. And I think WFRC does a fantastic job of getting all the communication out there. The league does their great work as well. And I want to continue that effort. And I want to make sure that as many partners as possible know all about that. So just wanted to say that. And thank you again, Andrew. I appreciate your work.
Mayor Ramsey, can I just do one sentence as well? I think a big part of the reason why we went through all of this detail is that you, the Regional Growth Committee, will be attending to a lot of these details in future meetings and working through guiding us as we establish process and criteria. So even if your community doesn't have a station area that is subject to this legislation, the Regional Growth Committee has that task ahead of us.
Thank you, Ted. And thank you to all of you. Miranda, is there anything else that you wanted to add to the end of this update?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Mary. I appreciate it. I think we're good, unless anyone has any outstanding questions from anything that happened during the session.
I'm panning back and forth between my screens to see if that's the case. I don't see anyone. Thank you so much. You know, it's amazing to fit a zillion hours of 45 days of nonstop into, you know, a synthesized 15-minute presentation. Thank you so much. And I want to echo as well and say thank you to everyone who really played a part in this. A lot of great work went into this. A lot of work went into it. And Wasatch Front Regional Council and the League of Cities and Towns have been really key. I want to thank Laura Hansen, working the state planner, working out of the GOP office. Laura's been really key. There's just so many who have really been part of this process, and just want to say thank you to all of you in helping us get there and get the funding that we needed for certain things. This is big. So it's monumental. This is generational funding that will benefit our children and grandchildren and the state of Utah for generations. So thank you.
And Mayor Ramsey, thanks personally to you too. Mayor Ramsey was tireless during the session, including running back and forth from South Jordan to the Capitol multiple times on multiple days. We won't tell too many stories right now, Mayor Ramsey, but you really did so much personally on behalf of all of us. So thank you very much for your efforts.
That's kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, item 4 on the agenda, we have an update on our Wasatch Choice and the 2023 through 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. That's what we do. Those of you who might be new to this committee, the Wasatch Choice Vision is our coordinated vision for transportation and growth, and the Regional Transportation Plan is one of the key elements of the Wasatch Choice. And one of our roles as the Regional Growth Committee is to steer that Regional Transportation Plan. We're the steering committee for it, and we work in partnership with all of our partners, but we have the good fortune of being the steering committee for that plan. And I mean, as you can hear just from that last update, it's critical, and this is very important. Today, we're going to continue the thread of conversation that we started at our last meeting. You might remember that we talked about prioritizing and phasing this plan. And so we have Julie Dornstad from WFRC. She's going to present to us an update. We'll continue this discussion, and it is a discussion, so please feel free to weigh in. But Julie has some good information for us and some things that we feel are really going to help move this along well. And then afterwards, I'll be prepared for a motion. This is an action item, and in your packet, there's wording for a motion. If anyone feels like that's something they'd like to make, we would appreciate that. And then we'll turn it back to Julie for one more item. So Julie, take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. Yes, as you mentioned, I'll be providing an update on the development of our 2023 to 2050 regional transportation plan. I might also say RTP to just speed things up there. But if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to stop me at any time. So I'll just start with a reminder that the Wasatch Choice Vision is an alignment of the regional transportation plan, local land use, and economic development strategies. And it's developed based on 10 regional goals that the Regional Council adopted. So the Regional Transportation Plan is our blueprint for the region's future road, transit, and active transportation investments over the next 20 to 30 years. So again, this is a plan that extends out to 2050. And projects are required to be on the Regional Transportation Plan in order to be considered for state transportation dollars, federal transportation dollars administered by WFRC, corridor preservation funds, and even some local option sales taxes for certain types of projects. So conversations about the future of the region and the future of transportation are based on this plan. So this is a calendar sort of the development of the new 2023 plan. We spent the last year testing ideas and identifying projects for inclusion. We've ended the year with a series of workshops with you, our local communities. And then we started this year continuing that outreach by refining the draft projects into a final preferred scenario. We'll be spending the remainder of the year assessing financial considerations, prioritizing projects, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then exploring transportation policies that can support our communities and our investments. And this is a conversation we started with you at the last RGC when we talked about that local context. The plan is slated for adoption next May, so May of 2023. So it's going to be a busy 14 months. So today, I'll be providing an update on that preferred scenario, coming back to conversations we've had about project phasing criteria and then local context for regional roads. So this is just an update on the preferred scenario. So before we prioritize or cost individual projects that are in the plan, most of you are familiar with that, what that plan looks like at the end. We want to look at what makes sense for the system as a whole. And so to arrive at that, we created a draft preferred scenario. This was based largely on the adopted 2019 Regional Transportation Plan. We had a series of conversations with our partner agencies like UDOT and UTA, and then our local communities at the fall workshops about these projects. And we spent the beginning part of this year continuing our coordination with UDOT, UTA, having an extensive one-on-one meetings with our local communities to refine those projects based on comments we heard. We've reached out to key stakeholders such as private sector groups and major landowners. And then we hosted 2 additional workshops, one with community organizations and one with federal, state, water, and school district agencies earlier this year. So we also sought public comment through an online public comment map. And through all of these outreach channels, we received about 700 comments on that draft scenario. And this included comments on projects, on future land uses, and on policies that could support our transportation network. So this all led to a final preferred scenario. And we built this cool map that allows you to explore changes from the adopted 2019 Regional Transportation Plan, which is shown on the left, compared to that 2023 preferred scenario. Jory is going to drop the link in the chat so that you can explore the preferred scenario for your community. And if there's any, as you're doing that, any concerns or feedback you'd like to provide us, you can send that to anyone on the Regional Transportation Planning Group or really anyone at WFRC, and it will get back to us. So Jory, if you would drop that link in the chat. So before I move on to the prioritizing projects by need, does anyone have any questions about that preferred scenario?
I guess I do, and I've got to drop off. So this is Jenny Wilson, and I hate to jump ahead, but I'm waiting for the link to look at how the Little Cottonwood Canyon options are listed in the plan, given UDOT hasn't yet rolled out their preferred scenario from the EIS. And I am assuming that Little Cottonwood is addressed in this plan.
Yeah, we can jump over to that area as well. So, Jory, do you want to jump in here on the Little Cottonwood projects and how we're planning on incorporating things that have come out of the EIS into the plan?
Currently, right now, we have pretty much what was in the last plan, so the 2019 plan, as a placeholder until the study is completed. We didn't want to get out ahead of the study. We know they're still reviewing thousands of comments, I believe. And so we're holding with what's in the current plan. You can see, you know, an operational project, and then also a widening project up there, along with an avalanche snow shed. So those are the three projects we have there, Mayor.
You know, so, Jory, sorry. So we would amend. So can you list the three projects: the avalanche sheds, the road widening,
and then there's an operational project? Yeah, that would just improve the operations going up and down the canyon, but without any additional widening. And you're 100% right. We would, once the study's done, and this is consistent with any environmental study, once the study's done, we have an amendment process for the regional transportation plan, and we'll be more than happy to line those up. And I believe even before the EIS is finalized, it needs to be in the regional transportation plan, matching up with what they submit ultimately to Federal Highways for review. State makes the final recommendation, but and Federal Highways has oversight. So we'll make sure that that gets matched up with the final EIS.
Okay, that's helpful. So we're in a holding pattern. We have something listed, but there's an anticipation that it would be amended if.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I think there's the risk if we pick something or one of the couple solutions, we end up, our whole plan could get held hostage by that, right? And the fact that I know how controversial it is, how many comments, and yeah, we'll hold with what we have in there right now.
Okay. Jory, if you could just send me a summary of that with this, I can probably find it, but I'd just like to know what is the status quo listing, just so I'm aware as the process moves forward. And I fully understand there'd be an amendment at a later date once we move forward and get more input and UDOT comes out with the preferred alternative. So, okay, I appreciate it. And I thank everyone for participating and apologize for needing to jump off early. I think we've got some staff still on from Salt Lake County.
Mayor Wilson, I just really, I think you're asking that question is one important example. I mean, one important project, but it's a great indicator. And I'm glad you brought that out of the dynamic nature of the planning process that we utilize here as we go forward. And of course, I'm sure Jory will be happy to send you info directly. Just to be clear, all of the information that's in here is also to everyone in the public. It's all available. But if anybody has any particular questions, Mayor Wilson or anybody, please do feel free to ask and we'll follow up with you directly.
Right.
Thanks,
I'm sorry to jump in the middle. I just am overscheduled today. So thank you, Madam Chair and Andrew and team. And I appreciate your great work. And thanks also for as was stated, the countless hours during the session and the great work that Wasatch Front does every year.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for being here. See ya. Okay, Julie, turn it back to you.
Okay, so so next, I just wanted to give you an update on the prioritizing projects by need. We talked about this at the January meeting of the Regional Growth Committee. So now that we have that preferred scenario, we can begin the process to prioritize the individual roadway, transit, and active transportation projects. And we begin that prioritization process by looking at when a project is needed. So this is independent of any conversation around funding availability. Phasing of the RTP projects is guided by the Wasatch Choice 2050 regional goals. And this is done by translating those goals into specific criteria to help WFRC understand how a project advances the goals. So the framework I'll be showing you is a refinement of what we did in the last RTP cycle. So this is not creating a new process, it's just enhancing the one that we previously used. And we began this process by reviewing our phasing criteria to align better with WFRC and state funding evaluation criteria. We also coordinated with our transportation partners on this effort. And then we presented a proposed framework to you, the RGC, in January, as I mentioned, and we discussed their your priorities. And yes, Ted, the details of the phasing criteria are located in your packet. So we followed up with that input from you in January with additional conversations with the Regional Growth Committee, Technical Advisory Committees, the Active Transportation Committee, and then with UDOT and UTA. And this kind of these conversations helped us to refine some of those phasing criteria and then helped us develop a sort of weighing so that when we go through each project and score the project against the criteria, we're giving that score based on a relative importance of phasing criteria. So this is just a high-level overview of the relative weighting of each criteria for the roadway projects. As I just mentioned and Ted dropped in that chat, more detail is included in your meeting packet about the phasing criteria and the weighting. And so each project in the RTP will be scored using that phasing criteria that you can see in your packet. So here as for roadway, we heard from you and from the Regional Growth Committee, Technical Advisory Committees that your priorities were access opportunities, mobility, and safety. And so you can see here that access opportunity is sort of the criteria with the highest weighting, and this includes improvement of access opportunities for the region as a whole, and then specifically our equity focus areas. We're also looking at transportation choices, which is including how the roadway accommodates transit and active transportation, so biking and walking, mobility, state of good repair, including pavement and bridges, safety, freight movement, and this aligns with UDOT performance measures as well as federal performance measures, and then access to those Wasatch Choice centers and project readiness. So basically, is there preserved corridor? Is there environmental studies that have been concluded? So that's roadway. And then for transit, we heard that your priorities were, again, access to opportunities, ridership, and accessibility. So access to destinations and access to high centers of population and employment. Here, again, that access opportunities is looking at the region as a whole, and then specifically for equity focus areas. And then that ridership portion is looking at both existing ridership and then future projected ridership. We're also looking again at mobility and then project readiness, which is again the corridor preservation, and then whether an environmental study or other planning studies have been completed. And then our last framework is active transportation. And this was also brought in addition to the Regional Growth Committee and the Technical Advisory Committees to the Active Transportation Committee to have a discussion there. And the priorities from those three groups included connectivity of the network, safety of the user, user demand, and then providing connections to transportation choices. So this is connections to our transit network, as well as areas with bike share, areas with other shared mobility like scooter share. We're again continuing that thread of access to opportunities, and then looking at access to centers and health. So that's a brief overview of the three frameworks we're using. Based on your recommendation today, we'll begin to prioritize projects based on this framework. And then we'll begin our public comment on the draft needs-based prioritized list of projects at the RGC Technical Advisory Committee in April. So we just have a few, about a month, a little over a month to work through this prioritization. And we encourage you to encourage your planning, engineering, and economic development staff to attend that April Technical Advisory Committee, because that is an important kickoff to getting feedback about this prioritized list. So that concludes the item on the phasing criteria. I'm happy to answer any questions now. And then we have asked for a motion on this agenda item. And this is the motion that's also in the packet. So we are saying WRC is requesting the Regional Growth Committee to make a motion to endorse the phasing criteria substantially in the form presented.
Okay, thank you so much, Julie. Appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for Julie about this at this point, or can I get a motion and then we can discuss it when the motion's on the table?
Madam Chair, I'll move to endorse the phasing criteria.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a motion by Mayor Zoltansky. Can we get a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Second by Commissioner Harvey. And welcome. We appreciate having you here. And with that, any additional discussion? And bear with me as I'm scrolling between lots of up and downs to see you.
Mayor Zoltansky, just a clarifying point my lawyer had is coming out right now. Your motion to endorse the phasing criteria was in substantially the form presented.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that clarification. It looks like we've got a thumbs up from Commissioner Harvey, so that's good. So that is the motion on the table. Okay, seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving the motion to endorse the phasing criteria in substantially the form presented, please unmute and say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion.
Mayor Ramsey, I think you muted accidentally.
Mayor Ramsey, I think you're muted on accident.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. I mean, this is not my first rodeo, right? We've done this before. Wow. Thank you. Okay. And thank you. That passes. And we have so much great work gone into this. Julie, thank you for all of your efforts and everyone's efforts on this. I'll turn it back to you. You have another item, but I just want to say thank you to everyone.
One last, perfect. Sorry. 2 years, I'm still talking over people. I apologize for that. So yeah, the last element of the update today was the local context for regional roads. And Hugh Van Wagenen, our active transportation planner, led a discussion with you about this at the January RGC meeting. And so what we're talking about here is the interaction of road design and land use centers, especially in the context of our Wasatch Choice Vision centers. This was really that kickoff of those policies I mentioned earlier that we'll be spending the next year talking with you on. And these are policies that kind of help support our transportation plan and our transportation system investments. So why are we talking about street design with you? Well, we see that research shows that when streets respond appropriately to land use context, the safety of all users on the street is improved and housing and job opportunities increase. So simply put, when land use and transportation work together, people are safer and economic activity increases. In January, Hugh showed you this example of an interplay between street design and land use within Kaysville, so on their main street, and walked you through the example, saying that in the southern portion of Main Street where it connects to US 89, we see that there are 2 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane. You can see the wide shoulders and dispersed land uses. And the speed limit here on this road is 45 miles an hour. But as we move to the north, we start to see those homes moving more adjacent to the road. And even though we kind of see that land use is changing and the land use is getting closer to the road, the configuration of the road is the same. We're seeing those two wide shoulders, 5 lanes, and the speed limit is still at 40 miles an hour. On the northern end, as we enter the business district, the more historic Main Street, the speed limit does decline to 35 miles an hour. The buildings come closer to the street. We start seeing street trees and some street furniture, but the cross section itself is laid out the same way. And so despite that the posted speed limit changes and despite the land use change, the design itself of the road doesn't do a lot to inform that there should be a slowing down of movement and that there should be an expectation to see the pedestrians and bicyclists who are going to be in an urban environment like this. Kaysville has been working with UDOT, and this is a presentation that was given yesterday at the Move Utah conference that UDOT is putting on, showing some work that was done to kind of address that Main Street area and really provide that context for people who are traveling through the area, that this is an area that we should be expecting all modes and that the design should reflect that. And so you can see the alternative 2 is the one that I think is moving forward. And so this has planted medians. There's traffic calming. The crossings are going to be enhanced. There's additional parking. There's a multi-use path. And so there's lots of different design elements that are coming together to give that indication that, you know, something is happening here. Let's slow it down and let's be aware of pedestrians and bicyclists who might be in the area. So this is that's the type of context that we're talking about with this policy. And in the January meeting, we took your temperature if WFRC should engage in efforts like this. What you said was that you do in your communities have roadways that could use a better fit with your community's context. And also said that WFRC should give this more attention, even if there were some concerns with how this could play out. So we said we would come back to you with suggested next steps, and I'll walk you through that we've developed. The idea is that we would work with a consultant in partnership with our cities, UDOT, UTA, and even the Mountain Lands Association of Governments, which is the MPO in Utah County. And so working with that consultant, we think it makes sense to map out these locations where this mismatch between context and road design or between land use and road design is likely an issue. And then we would work with stakeholders to raise this awareness and suggest some next steps. A key part of this is, again, to reinforce that this is a collaborative process. And then we would bring back these locations to you and then start to think through where this is a significant issue, where can we provide some broad recommendations on how to move forward. And so that study should go out to an RFQ here soon in the next few months. It'll be in good hands. Ted is going to be the leader on our side. So we know it's going to be a great project that will hopefully come up with some really great recommendations for the region. And we will continue this conversation with you, the RGC, and then also with the RGC tax through the coming months. Does anyone have any questions about this local context for regional roads and what it means as we move forward?
Julie, just a quick comment. A number of years ago, when I was at Salt Lake County, we brought in a national expert to talk about these centers, and he had his staff do a rough calculation, and in Salt Lake County, we figured for the population density and other things that there were only about half the centers that could exist and exist in a productive and meaningful way. So I applaud this approach, and I think, you know, as we look at development and as we look at really maximizing land use and having that compatibility, that, you know, working toward these, you know, as we do projects or other things would be really a good idea. So thanks for your work on it.
Yeah, thank you for your work at the county, at the city, and now at UTA. Okay, so that was the update of where we are in the development of the regional, the development of the regional transportation plan. Too many regionals. So I'm happy to engage in further conversation with you now or offline. You can reach me via phone or email. And I just want to thank you for your time and input today.
Julie, thank you so much. I'm just scrolling through to see. Okay, thank you. And I figured out how I muted. Remember I said everyone unmute to vote, and then I clicked mine and that muted me. Yeah, great. Thank you, Julie, for that and for everything and for being so accessible. Appreciate you and all of the staff at WFRC for being available to answer any questions that anyone has at any time. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. You know, many of you know that February was a grand experiment here in the state of Utah as UTA went through, was it free fair or fair free? I want to call it the right thing, fair free February. Is that right?
Free fair February.
Free fair February.
Yeah,
yeah,
say
well,
it 3 times.
Okay. Free fair February. Anyway, it's a fantastic concept. And I know UTA is now going through all of the input and the data and really trying to understand the outcomes of that and what that experiment resulted in. But I wanted to turn some time over to Carlton Christensen, who's the chairman of the board for UTA, represents Salt Lake County on that board. And Carlton, do you have any preliminary information that you could share with us?
Yeah, I'll have a few slides and I certainly invite my colleague Beth Holbrook to join in if she has some additional comments she wants to add. We had it's interesting, you would think that you just do a comparison of what the prior months were and suddenly that's your challenge, but there are a lot of other nuances to the data, including, you know, the waning edge of Omicron viruses and how many people were going back to the office and how you can compare, you know, one period over another. But we had a real preliminary review in our last board meeting, and I thought it would be good to go through some of this. Know that we're still analyzing the data and we're hopeful to have something more comprehensive probably in about a month and come back maybe in a future RGC or a WFRC meeting we could give a more in-depth analysis. But why don't we go to the next slide? Couple ways that, and we have an open data portal if anybody ever wants to, you know, drill down and look at some things, and we do actually capture quite a bit of data. But there's a couple ways in which we thought was a little more equitable in how we looked at it, and in particular the end of January in comparison to an average time frame in February was a little more reflective than say a year ago or, you know, pre-COVID. And just to give context, we all remember about this time in 2020 is when, you know, our ridership, you know, just dropped off the face of the map. And then, but in January and February in 2020 were actually typical months for us, and we had been seeing a little bit of an increase. Just as a quick overview, in the last 5 days of January compared to the last 5 days of February, you can see some of these increases, 17% increase in ridership. I think one of the real telling things for us was some of the increases we saw on the weekends, and in particularly Sundays. And the reason I point Sunday out, we don't run front runner service on Sundays. And so when you see those kind of increases, that's in tracks and light rail and some of our other services. And so I think that is pretty telling. Obviously, we're not back up to, you know, a pre-pandemic level. And in fact, I think as was pointed out at the beginning of the meeting, you know, we're looking to going back to in-person meetings. We still have some large employers that are returning back to the office. But compared to nationally, our transit agency over other transit agency has a greater return of ridership. And just know that the January of 20 versus January 22, we're back to about 54% of pre-pandemic ridership, and then February over February in those 2 years, we're back to about 66%. And so why don't we go to the next slide? These are, we often will look at an average weekday because there can be some anomalies, during the context of one week to another. And so the average gives us just a much better indication. And I think one of the other telling things, anecdotally, and we're going to work with DEQ, but February is usually notorious for bad air days. And so we'll see what that effect is, obviously. But this just gives you, again, some breakdowns of January average to February average, a 20% increase, again, on the weekends to 38%. Next slide. This one goes, we wanted to take those last 5 days or the last 2 weekends days and then the last 5 weekdays and compare those to an average weekday for February and Saturday and then Sunday. Again, we're seeing increases of 12, 35, and 36%. And we think that is probably more reflective of the current public health scenarios and then true ridership increases. Because we had seen at the end of 2021 a decrease in ridership, but there was also an increased challenge on public health. Next slide. These, again, I think pointing out a couple aspects on this is in Frontrunner in particular. And what we point out and was really intriguing to us, historically, Frontrunner ridership on the weekend is not, super high. But comparatively, in February, we saw a 211% increase. And we were running probably about as full of trains as we could, and they were happening on the weekend or on Saturday in particular. Next slide, please. Again, these are really early numbers. We are super grateful to WFRC, to Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City, a number of other public partners, MAG, who contributed. Our gap to sort of fill the fare was not as wide because we're obviously not riding as much ridership. And so I think financially it was a little bit more doable. Certainly a lot of people came in with not a lot of notice and really stepped up to the plate, and we're working through that process. But I think it will help inform us a lot as we look to the future and what that scenario should look like, and hopefully see what the impact of that is on our air quality and just. But we do know that it exposed a lot of new people to using transit that may not have. And as you look at the cost of fuel, and it'll be interesting to see how these next few months take it. So I know Russ looks like he has a comment.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to add just real quickly that we're partnering with WFRC and MAG, that we are actually in the process. Consultant has been selected to continue to study this. We actually kicked this off where the Joint Projects Committee was looking at doing a zero fare study. So consultant's been selected. They're going to start that process. So we'll also have something hopefully completed by August or September of this year. So the free fare February, I think, is going to be really beneficial for providing some good baseline information for that study. But so yeah, there'll be more to come with that as well.
We had a lot of inquiries from other transit agencies around. It certainly was recognized and acknowledged when we just returned from our national legislative conference, and there was a number of discussion in regard to it. Any other questions I can respond to?
And I just wanted to make a comment.
Please.
Carlton articulated really well how we've kind of taken a look at this, and it has shown us some interesting dynamics. Again, some of the dynamics are the fact that people are taking transit at different times than what a traditional commuter would probably see, which is your morning commute and your afternoon home commute. And I think the other element to think about as well, and I think that this ties into when we look at doing station area planning, the House Bill 462, one of those elements of connectivity is how can you access the system and do that first and last mile. And as we look to be more strategic, even more so than we already are today, that I think can also really have some impacts when we look at utilization of the system and the connectivity as we develop housing as well as other elements to that. And I think that Carlton mentioned it quite well. The national perspective on UTA and UTA's processes in regards to looking at different types of elements to make those connectivities to transit even stronger. We can't emphasize enough how much we did get that question. We got that question in regards to not only the housing piece, which was a big part of that, but also the ridership and how do you navigate with your community partners in order to really make your system nimble and address some of the needs that they have. And so I think that this, plus the study that Russ mentioned, is really going to be helpful as we look at our increased infill, if you will, moving forward. So thanks again to all the partners as well. We really appreciated all of the efforts of everyone in this.
I noticed Mayor Sotansky also had a question, Mayor.
I have a comment. I think the Free Fare February was a great success. Want to thank you, Carlton, for your leadership, Andrew, for taking an idea and running with it, and of course, our mayors who sparked it originally. So especially Mayor Mendenhall, thank you so much for making that opportunity available. I heard from a lot of Sandy residents that they took advantage of the front runner, especially personally, it was my first time riding the front runner. So I shared a lot of my impressions on social media platforms that were also widely shared. I've heard from a lot of residents who wanted just to go full board free fare, especially now with the gas prices. So I don't know if we could do another run in the summertime when people are, more recreation activity is happening in our community. And also, now that we're getting further distance from the COVID concerns and people are resuming, in-person workspace. I think if we tried it again, late spring or summer, or maybe it's something in conjunction with the gas pricing that is so concerning to all of us, I think we would get even greater participation. So just want to put that out there and thank everybody for the opportunity to present all the transit options that are available in Sandy and all along the Wasatch Front. And I'd love to try explore more of those opportunities going forward.
Russ, Julie, remind us again the timeline for the analysis that's underway right now, because Mayor Zoltansky's comment is an interesting one about, we have this Free Fare February, we have the analysis, and then what comes after that? Do we do other trials? Do we look at more permanent approaches? What's the timing on that analysis?
So yeah, the analysis is supposed to be finished up again later this early fall, August, September timeframe for that to be completed. Again, the consultant's been selected. I think, they've got their work kicked off. So yeah, that we should have that by September by the latest, unless Julie knows anything more beyond that, but that's the way I understand it.
Yeah, we're hoping to have it done in about 6 months. So September. And the consultant's Nelson Nygaard, who has done similar studies for transit agencies around the nation. So really is the nation's leader in understanding some of the issues and impacts of going zero fare. And there's no set outcome on this project. So there may not be any next steps in terms of recommending that the system goes zero fare. We're really keeping an open mind and open eye out on does it make sense? What are the impacts? How is ridership impacted? How is service impacted? And its potential, what are the other ways that we could meet some of the goals that UTA and the partners have? Maybe not the entire system goes zero fare, maybe just the fare free zone gets expanded, or there's reduced fare for more people. So I think that the possibilities are really open on what the study may recommend. And in the end, it may also recommend that this is not feasible long-term. So we don't have any set expectations on what the outcome is. I just wanted to throw that out there. Just because I think sometimes people say, oh, we're doing the study, it's of course going to recommend that the whole system goes zero fare. And so then there's next steps on how to implement that. And it may not be that recommendation.
Julie, it's a great point. Carlton, Beth, it makes me think, we don't want to assume any outcomes here, but it's worth noting perhaps that there were at least 2 pieces of legislation in the last session that would have required statutorily going to no fare. Now, they also didn't identify how to pay for the lost revenue. So that's an important, point to keep in mind. But this is certainly an issue that will be revisited, not just by us collectively or UTA, but also by other stakeholders. So more to come, and ideas to consider, including Mayor Zoltansky's and others as we go forward.
And Andrew, if I could, Jay Aguilar asked the question, are we doing anything to promote? And actually, since last July 1st, to any entities that we have been offering, as long as we haven't had to expand service, we have been offering ticket as fare. So there are a lot of events, there's a concert series in Ogden, there's a concert series in Salt Lake. Actually, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they're going back to an in-person general conference, and they are heavily encouraging ridership on Front Runner. They have some logistical issues around Temple Square right now, and so, but we've done it for a number of groups, and and there's been some co-branding there. But we welcome through the rest of the year if you have events in your communities that we'd love to have you connect with our marketing folks to try to do that, because we've been very fortunate in that we've had some federal dollars to help us offset some operational costs, and we're doing that. And we're as our executive director Jay Fox, who came from SEPTA or the Philadelphia area, our ridership's probably double what it is in Philadelphia, and so we're working, but we know it's a long road back to where we once were. So. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate this and all the information. Thank you, both Carlton and Beth, and Mayor Zoltansky for your comments, and just everyone who's been part of this. We are excited to see kind of what the data shows and to continue to build this back as a very important mode of transportation for people. Thank you so much. Okay, if you note the time, it's 11:06 a.m. So here is what we're going to do. On the agenda that you have, I believe it has our good friend Ari Bruning from Envision Utah next, and then the Transportation and Land Use Connection Project Awards after that. What we're going to do is go to Megan Townsend to discuss the TLC awards and how communities apply. That's what the TLC awards are for. We'll let Megan take the Transportation Land Use Connection, and then Ari's presentation is so good and it's so important. The information is so critical. What I'd like to see, and in text he said this is okay, is if we put him at the start of our next meeting and give him a generous amount of time to make his presentation because the information really is so good. I've seen it, and you're all going to want to see it. It's very good. So if that's going to work, let's turn to Megan, and we will move Ari's research coming out of Envision Utah on how Utah links growth, housing, and equity to their underlying values. You're not going to want to miss that. Let's move that to next time, if that's okay, and turn to Megan right now.
Thank you, Mayor Ramsey, and thank you, Ari, for your flexibility. This is timely information, and I'm excited to be able to share it with this committee today. Although it is a squished agenda, the March RGC meeting is my favorite because the Community and Economic Development team here at WFRC has been working hard on these transportation and land use connection awards for 2022, and we're excited to share them with you all. So our TLC program, right, the Transportation and Land Use Connection, is a partnership between UDOT, UTA, Salt Lake County, and Wasatch Front Regional Council. The program provides planning technical assistance to your cities. Many of you are working on these projects now, and we're going to announce the brand new ones today for 2022. Quick reminder of the program goals: maximize the value of investment in public infrastructure, enhance access to opportunities, increase travel options to optimize mobility, and create communities with opportunities to live, work, and play. Even if you're new to this committee, these should look familiar. These align right with our Wasatch Choice and many of the other activities we work on here at WFRC. So we worked with our partners listed there at the bottom. We evaluated based on our criteria. We discussed your projects, and here's what we've got this year, 2022. So we are making TLC awards in the amount of about 1.5 million. We have a fantastic local match this year of $457,000. This goes a long way. This helps us stretch the funding for this program, and I think this is the most that communities have ever matched in the region. So it just shows how important this planning is to you and your cities as well. We had a great demand. So we've got 16 awards in 19 communities. We do have one project that has multiple communities involved. We have 8 in the Salt Lake urbanized area, 7 in the Ogden-Layton urbanized area, and 1 in Tooele County. The reason the RPOs are eligible under this money is because we have our partnership. So we're able to provide support to Tooele County and to Morgan, and we thank our partners for that. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. I know many of you are on the call. We're so excited to work with you in your cities. Seriously, our team just absolutely loves getting these projects started with you all. So I am going to go quickly, but thank you for your interest in this program. So we've got a few ordinance updating projects. Copperton applied for an active transportation plan and connectivity ordinance. So this is great. Implementation's packed right there into this project. Salt Lake City Planning will received an award for the 300 West Corridor Plan and zoning amendments. If you've been on 300 West lately, you know that corridor is changing tremendously. So we're excited to be able to support the city in continuing to make that a little bit more walkable, among other things. And then Ogden City, we will be continuing to work with Ogden on their zoning to do a citywide zoning ordinance update. Really exciting for Ogden. I think they'll find a lot of use in this. Small area plans, we have several. The Layton City, Gordon, and Highway 89 Town Center Master Plan. The North Ogden Southtown Commercial Center Plan. Continuing to work with North Salt Lake on their town center, doing a market study, really trying to move plans there forward. Midvale has a historic Main Street urban design project, and South Salt Lake has a Central Point Station area plan. Now, this relating back to HB 462, we're excited to get started with South Salt Lake on this because this is right in line with what they're going to be required to do through that legislation. And we're going to be funding, TLC has always funded station area plans. We've always supported that work, but we're going to be funding much more of this to help you and your cities work through what's being required under that legislation. And we'll get started with South Salt Lake a little early, which is fantastic. Active transportation plans. Again, Copperton's listed here. We also have holiday study of I-215 shared use active transportation path and a Tooele City active transportation plan. This program loves active transportation. It's a love story. Corridor studies, Harriman Transit Corridor and Land Use Study, a Salt Lake City 1300 East and University District Circulation Studies. This is very heavily partnered with the University of Utah. And Farmington City North Station Area Alternate Transportation Study, continuing to work with Farmington City on their station area We've had a few phases of working with Farmington through the TLC program. And finally, our regional and citywide plans. The Southwest Waterways Visioning effort with Bluffdale, Harriman, Riverton, and West Jordan, led by Salt Lake County. This is a really exciting project for many reasons, one of which is it is a partnership. This effort is going to be supplemented by our partnership with IHC and Science Bank, working together to build healthy communities. Shalene, you're on the call. I just want to say thanks, and we're excited to get started on this project and more to come from this effort, this partnership with IHC and Science Bank. Riverdale City. Oh, sorry about that. Riverdale City, a general plan comprehensive update, as well as West Point City, a general plan update. Those are, I believe those are the first awards for those individual cities. So we're happy to be able to present those. You can always find more information about the TLC projects ongoing and soon to be brand new. In a couple of weeks, we'll have all the new projects up here in our interactive map. That's at wfrc.org/TLC. You'll see the project map there. You can click through. It looks like confetti hit the map. I think it's exciting. You'll see projects all over the region, including your own. You can see what you've done your cities may have done in the past and what you're working on now. And you can always call us, right? Please call us, the CED. Oh, I went right to it, you see? I'm not gonna do that because we're out of time. Oh, I guess I am. Well, anyway, you can reach out. I'll put my email in the chat. I won't bother you with this map today, but please reach out about these projects and future projects. And I am just so excited to get started. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Megan, and congratulations to everyone who has projects that were awarded a TLC grant. There's a lot of great work happening. We appreciate Wasatch Front Regional Council facilitating so much of that and providing so much technical assistance and so much help to each of our communities and all of these projects. Thank you for that. Okay, I want to see if Ari is willing to give us a teaser, if you will. Ari, would you mind giving us a quick teaser about, it's such good information that he has to share.
I'll give you the 30-second version. So this value study work is something we've done over the years. So we've done it 4 times so we can kind of track how Utahns are feeling about growth. And so the research points to how they're feeling about growth. Spoiler alert, they're more concerned about growth than we've ever seen Utahns. What issues are most important to them, how they're feeling about a variety of housing near them, what the pros and cons of that are, and points to some principles about how we ought to be talking about issues and messaging to people about these issues. So lots of very useful things. And we're also trying to turn the research into a messaging guide that we hope will be helpful to all of you. So.
Thank you so much. Envision Utah will be working with the GOPB office on this statewide growth conversation that will be happening. That was a priority of the Economic Opportunities Commission, and we're grateful for the one-time funding. So if anybody talks to your legislators, thank them. We're voting to approve the budget with the $1 million funding for that conversation, because I think at least all of us on this call recognize how important it is that we have. There's lots of conversations, but being able to have a statewide conversation directed by the state, led by the state. Laura will be working really closely on that, and we need that. I think we all need that, and trying to understand this information from Envision Utah will help inform our understanding, and then also help us with understanding how to direct the messaging from the state, and also facilitate a real conversation with residents in the state in a different way than it's ever been done. So thank you for that. Really, I can't say enough. Please be sure you come to our next meeting, because you're going to want to hear this. If you represent anyone anywhere, if you're working on the work of people in your community anywhere, which everyone on this meeting, that's exactly what we do. You're going to want to hear what Envision Utah has collected and the data that they've got and the feedback they have from residents across the state. Thank you for that. I want to welcome Mayor Vincent, who is new to this committee, and also Commissioner Harvey. Early on, we just allowed our new people to say hi, hey, and we just want to thank you, and thank you for being here. And so a shout out to both of you. Very quickly, our next meeting is May 19th, 2022. On your agenda, there are additional upcoming meetings that included the Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting, specifically next Thursday, March 24th. but there are several, and I'll let you just refer to your agenda for all of the other upcoming meetings. But unless anyone has anything else, I want to say thank you and ask for a motion to adjourn.
If no questions, Madam Chair, I'll motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that, Councilman. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for being here and for your work. Nice to see you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.